we are going to reach, there's a moment, and I don't know when that moment is, but there is a moment when autonomy is going to seem like the thing you do to move around. It's going to seem like this to people. Why would I drive a car in an hour and a half commute twice a day when the car can drive me and I can do stuff while I'm going back and forth? That's how it's going to seem to people.
Yep.
And people will pay for that. Saudi Aramco did, I think at one point, 1 year, 2022, if I'm correct, they did $225 billion in EBITDA. Apple, Google, and Microsoft, you add them together, you don't get 400. If he were to achieve that, there's no way on this earth or any other place where there's rational financial markets that the stock price would settle at 8.5 trillion.
Oh,
because
no way.
I think something clicked in his brain when FSD became real. It became this inevitable reality that he's going to need a ton of chips. He wants it to be a chip program that's on a very, very aggressive, like 12-month cycle, which is really hard. That's why I think we're hearing about 5 is coming online, needing more compute. We need an AI 6. And, once that happens, we need an AI 7. These chips are the brain of these products. And without these chips, these products could not exist. It's super mission critical.
Looking like it now, it's the most important thing right now for Tesla. What do you think, Phil? Do you think Elon's gonna do it? Do you think Elon is gonna say, screw it? We're gonna go build this Terrafab. Welcome everybody to another episode with the one and only Phil Beisel. Now, if you guys aren't familiar with him, you guys better follow him on X because he is the software guy. X Rivian. He made the software for the Rivian, and he knows a thing or two or three about the software stuff. So every time when I have any concern or any questions, I always reach out to Phil Beisel to come on the channel to tell us about what is Tesla doing, like what is going on. And we're here to talk about that. We're here to talk about the recent Elon talking about the AI 5 all the way to AI 8, like what has gone there, what this means for the tech, what this means for the product, Optimus, Robotaxi, FSD, and all these awesome products that are coming, how far advanced they are. And of course, the valuation, what this could mean as well, because I think this is very important for Tesla investors to know the fundamentals of this so they can make your conviction more solid. When you know this, when you know about these fundamental stuff, the more confident you are about your investment. And I think this is very important to know. And Phil Beisel is the guy to talk to when it comes to these things. How you doing, Phil? Thank you for coming on the channel. Welcome back.
I'm doing well, thank you. Yeah, it's been a bit, but here we are.
A bit, yes. Yeah. And a lot of things has happened, so we got to talk about them.
Crazy, right?
Yeah, it's
high
insane.
velocity. Everything's high velocity.
Like I don't like Elon's talking about AI 8. Like what has happened? What, like, in your point of view, in your knowledge, in your experience, what like the breakthrough, like what has happened now that he can talk about AI 8? Like that is insane.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of this stuff ends up dawning on us as a certain thing that, and it's been swimming through his brain for a long time. I mean, what's happened here is that he's had 2 chip programs inside of Tesla for a bit of time. He's had Dojo, sort of a training style chip, and he's had the AI series, or what, currently in cars, there's hardware 4, but they've renamed that AI 4. So we'll just, use that nomenclature.
Yeah.
I think what he's realized, or we've realized that he's realized, is that, the amount of inference compute, like if you think about what's going on here, there's a whole bunch of things that lead to like dialing back the pure training side of this and more about day-to-day inference. So, just to use definitions here, inference is the use of the neural network model, whether it's in vehicle, Optimus, or just in a chat bot where you're chatting with it. It's when you're using AI, that is inference. And before that, building the model is referred to as training, right?
Right.
So a bunch of stuff is happening here. We've got FSD as a core technology that will make its way into Robotaxi. We've got FSD as a technology that will make its way into user vehicles, user-owned vehicles. We've got a derivative of FSD that is powering Optimus, and all the compute that's done on those things is inference, right? It's the edge compute. And so, what's happened is he kind of looked at the whole Dojo program and said, I'm spending a lot of time, money, resource, but let me just go get that from NVIDIA for now. Like, what's the point? Like, where he feels he should put all the effort is into the edge node inference compute. Even as you've recently heard, he wants to do AI in space, which I think is a very real thing. And I mean, that won't be tomorrow, but it's a very real thing. And that mostly will be probably inference too. It'll be humans on planet Earth using AI for all sorts of purposes, and that inference being computed in the cloud for the first time in a more literal way. Yeah. So if you total all that together, he was obviously his team. He had a chip team working on AI5 as a follow-on processor to the AI4 processor that's in current cars. And I think he's really just doubled or tripled down on that. He said, let's get rid of this Dojo thing, and let's focus on these AI chips that are mostly tuned best for inference purposes. Okay. And, suddenly it became clear. And again, when I say this, I'm not trying to say it became clear to Elon in September. I mean, I think Elon has this thought in his brain, but if you remember during the shareholders meeting, he started talking about, geez, we're going to need a lot of these chips. Yeah. And we're thinking about this thing called the Terrafab.
Yeah.
And, while you think, oh, that just dawned on him, obviously it didn't, because, he's able to compute the number of chips per device and the total addressable market of those devices, whether it's robotaxis, 1 million robotaxis is 2 million chips. 1 million Optimus is probably 2 million chips. I mean, there's a debate whether they're going to use, like 2 chips per Optimus for fault tolerance, but I think they will. Well, there's a debate in our minds, probably not in their minds, but each car has 2 for fault tolerance, right? Because it's a safety critical system. You can't have it fail, just fail outright while you're driving, or it's driving you. So I think what's happened here is we've seen this whole idea that, oh my God, we're going to need a lot of these chips to fuel these products. He sees the market opportunity. I think something clicked in his brain when FSD became real. FSD, I think, reached some threshold where he could see, I talk about this a lot, this concept of convergence. And in this case, what I'm talking about is the convergence of a product to solution. And I've been looking at, reading the tea leaves about FSD since 13 and coming on 14. And I think we can see convergence. Means, in other words, is it solved? It's solved in the extent that it is converging on a solution to be solved. And it's doing it rather rapidly. So I think, Elon would be sitting back saying, okay, before I deploy capital, CapEx or OpEx, before I deploy any form of capital, I need to see what's in front of me. I mean, I need to get ahead of it, but I need to see what's in front of me in terms of market opportunity. And when I think FSD became real, and I think, that was early summer for probably his brain, probably early fall in our brains, and mostly because, the team is ahead of us in terms of software releases, and they see what we're getting. They're literally ahead of us, maybe 2 or 3 months in terms of knowledge. So I think once he saw all that, it became this inevitable reality that he's going to need a ton of chips. It's required. And from that perspective, I think he also feels that he wants it to be a chip program that's on a very, very aggressive, like 12-month cycle, which is really hard. Yeah, super hard to do. But I think he wants to get on that train. You know, he wants to get at that 12-month kind of reward. So that's why I think we're hearing about, okay, 5 is coming online. We'll get samples. Tesla will get samples mid 26 and have full production capacity early 27.
Yeah.
But just as you step into that and you realize, okay, here's what AI 5 does for me. All this stuff is going to come to bear in terms of needing more compute, and therefore, okay, we need an AI 6. And once that happens, we need an AI 7. It's a natural course of things. It's not really much different than Apple on a 1 to 1.5 year cycle introducing a new A processor for iPhone, right? Better, faster, cheaper, better performance, lower power, more RAM, all that kind of stuff. And I think that's always going to matter in products. It's always going to matter. I mean, I've heard people say, well, once FSD is solved, why do we need a bigger chip? That's literally silly. Of course, we need a bigger chip because FSD doesn't have a final place in terms of, we don't have a final release. We have continuing releases and new feature adds. We'll have amazing integrated voice response system in our vehicles, be able to talk to our vehicles much like we would talk to Optimus or talk to Grok. And that will require a lot more inference cycles, resonant inference cycles, on vehicle, right? And of course they'll always want to run to some extent, they'll always want to run the inference cycles faster on vehicle and at higher resolution, because that'll just, if you had 10x more compute at the same power constraint or power reality, you'd use it.
Yeah.
Right. And there's an easy way to do that with these models.
Yeah, no, that's you mentioned a lot of great points when FSD became real. Ever since I landed here in Toronto, I've rented a Tesla that has the latest version, and I have not been driving. The thing has been driving me the whole entire time, and it is real. It is real, and mixing that in with what Elon did with canceling the well, I don't know if that's the right word, but like not focusing too much on building their own chips, but using NVIDIA's chips and other chips to make the next Dojo. I think that was a smart move from Elon, because then he can focus on the strength of the company rather than focusing on something that NVIDIA is really good at, and just use NVIDIA to do what can be done for this. Exactly.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think what he was, I think what set in there was a realization that a lot of the training for FSD and follow on Optimus won't be as, now this is kind of like in some relative scale, people, because I mean, Cortex is a very big data center in Austin, and they're building Cortex 2, but it's not the same scale as an XAI to train roughly ultimately a trillion parameter model for knowledge. So these models, these vision-based models, or vision to action-based models that we see in Optimus and FSD, they're very compute intense, but on a comparison basis to like what XAI is doing, it's less. And so it makes a lot of sense that from a Tesla perspective, they say, look, in the training side, let's just use a ton of NVIDIA. And by the way, one of the interesting things when I talk about that, it reminded me to say this, is that a lot of the training for FSD and Optimus is moved from what would be called imitation learning to now reinforcement learning. And reinforcement learning requires a lot more compute, and that compute effectively is inference. It's inference in the training, because what you're doing is you're taking a virtual car or a virtual bot and you're running it through thousands of different potential trajectories and giving it rewards or penalties so it trains the right model. Well, guess what? When you do that, you're essentially running inference. That's why Tesla has said, we have 40,000, we have 80 to 100,000 GPUs at Cortex 1, and we have 40,000 hardware 4 boards running simulation or inference use cases, right? For reinforcement learning. So in other words, interestingly enough, if you want to consume these AI chips, think of them as consuming them in the actual physical products of Optimus, FSD, Robotaxi, or otherwise, obviously any Tesla vehicle running FSD, data centers in space eventually, but also reinforcement learning for those very products at Cortex. So these inference chips get used a lot. And I think it is the right balanced decision to say, instead of a very, very forward-leaning, training architecture, let's just focus on the inference side. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's very smart from Tesla's point of view, because then they can scale the FSD Robotaxi much quicker and Optimus much faster.
Yeah.
So that is interesting. I want to know your thoughts on this one. The Terrafab, when Elon mentioned it, I'm just like, that, I mean, don't you need like specific things to make these types of chips? And I don't, is it really that easy just to say that, okay, let's just go, of course it's not that easy, but let's be more vertical integrated and let's make a Terrafab so we don't run out of chips. But then when you see other companies like, TSMC and Samsung that makes the actual chips, in Elon's point of view, they're slow, but they are moving lightning fast.
From their perspective, that's true. Yeah, yeah.
So what are your thoughts on that? Like the Terrafab,
well,
I mean,
it's okay. It's just this is a crazy one to unpack.
I know.
This is vertical integration out of necessity, not out of some other for other reasons. It's not really a cost-based thing. It's really a necessity. Like, how can we produce enough of these things? To build a fab is one of the most complicated, labor-intensive, capital-intensive things you can do from a manufacturing side on planet Earth. These fabs, I don't know how many years we're into the, Taiwan Semi's built the fab in Arizona, and I think they're in their 5th year on that to get to production side. And then there's these large scale lithography machines from ASML that pretty much like single source vendor, where you have to get these things, and they're incredibly expensive machines. And I think, Elon's looking at this, and he's either using it as a bit of a bargaining chip, meaning saying, yeah, I mean, I think he's basically saying, I'm really gonna push the pedal down, and I'm gonna be one of the biggest consumers of these types of things in the future, in terms of fabrication requirements. And I mean, in his brain, he's like swapping himself for Apple, right? I mean, Apple owns, Apple has dedicated use, or, I don't know, 40 something, 50% of Taiwan Semi committed outputs, and I think he's saying, yeah, that's great. iPhone's a big product, but Optimus is going to be much bigger. So how do I get there from here? So I don't think, in his mind, there's no way he's taking this Terrafab idea lightly. It's a bit of an insane thing. I mean, I think somebody that I know is talking to has computed that the physical size of this might need to be like 10x the square footage that is currently in the Austin factory.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So this is a galactic size project that we'll just say very much leans into the future. But I think it's a weird thing, because if you think about the capacity of all these, so you've got, I don't know how many chips are made a year worldwide, but 40% of all the profits on these chips are all the complex ones, the A processors, the M processors that Apple does, the NVIDIA chips. And then, of course, there's, a trillion other types that are out there that are smaller factors that are required for lots of things. But from his perspective, he's looking at this saying, what's out there from a capacity perspective is way too small, and I'm going to get pinched. I think he sees a pinch point, right? In other words, he'll get what he needs in the next 2, 3, 4 years out of a combination of Taiwan Semi and Samsung, and then all of a sudden the pinch will happen. What was the worst problem you could have? What's the highest quality problem you could have with Optimus? That you learned how to make enough, that you learned how to get a supply chain materialize to make a very complex product, that you've got the software ready, and your customers want this product in large quantities, and you're missing a key piece of the supply, the inference chip. So I think, it's if you do the math, no matter how it comes out, there's a pinch point here based on what he thinks the TAM is for Optimus and the number of chips that can be produced by his relationships with these current fabrication houses. So what does he do? He either convinces them to move faster and co-build with him, maybe he buys Intel that has fab capacity, capability, but not at the node levels of that Taiwan semi, or maybe he builds a fab. And it's possible, although incredibly difficult, to also think that he may consider new processes here, and really kind of design a chip fabrication from first principles, because a lot of what's in chip fabrication are optimizations to solve problems that are based on problems that, have grown up through the industry. There might be a point where, there's obviously some startups out there trying to look at new processes, but it's in a weird way, it's one of the biggest bottlenecks for AI or any future, is the fabs and the machinery that make up these fabs.
Yeah.
The physical assets of them, the bring up time, and the machinery.
Having enough of the chips. They've mentioned it many times that we need to have enough chips. And I mean, what do you think, Phil? Do you think Elon's going to do it? Do you think he's going to say, screw it, we're going to go build this Terrafab?
I'm sure he's going to inform himself well. I mean, look at there's some job specs out there for folks at a very high level in the fabrication side. This is not an easy ready skill, right? Yeah. And he's already got job postings for this. And these jobs are not, the bunny suit people in the fab. This talking about people that are top of their game, top level people that have built these things from idea. Yeah, I think he's going to do it. But I don't know how it gets funded. I mean, there's a lot of things that are happening here. There's a lot of moving parts. I mean, the fab exercise is most people would say 5 years, $40+ billion or more, maybe up to 100 billion. I don't know, like these big numbers, big time scale. But then he's also got this whole other massive convergence occurring across his companies, his portfolio.
Yes.
And it's inescapable. Like, I mean, in other words, nobody does data centers in space without SpaceX. Like, literally nobody. I mean, there's some other people floating around, mass to orbit, but SpaceX is by far the biggest mass to orbit company, and with Starship will dominate that in the high 90% for years and years to come. There'll be nothing else out there that can move mass to space at the price point that SpaceX will be able to do. And therefore, if you want to build a data center in space, whether you're XAI, one of his own companies, or you're Google, you're likely going through SpaceX. So that's, there's this weird convergence there. If we're going to move a lot of compute resource into orbit, it's going to require a lot more. I mean, SpaceX is suddenly, a key company in the whole fabric of the thing. I mean, and it's funny to think about this, right? Because SpaceX is a massive enterprise, right? It's I don't know, what's its private market cap is
300 billion.
Yeah, 300 to 400 billion. And yet we think of it as, some little company that, launches these things, and it's just about Elon's fantasy of going to Mars. And most people don't realize it is the mass to orbit company. It moves I don't know, almost 90% of all payload to space, regardless of whether it's commercial or by country. And of course, ironically, the largest mass to space operation is his own Starlink, which is part of SpaceX. Yep. He's got 10,000 Starlink satellites, and he's launching more of those, then the number of Starlink satellites dominate what's out there of all satellites by huge numbers. So suddenly SpaceX is like, right there. And you can see this, really interesting triangle between what Tesla does, what SpaceX does, and what XAI does. And in some weird way, you can just see them as like, it's almost like they're really converging into a single entity, even if they're independent.
Yeah, Elon has mentioned that they are converging, which is insane to think about because Tesla has its own ecosystem, and then you have the ecosystem outside of Tesla.
Right.
And then you have all these other companies, and it's just like, my God, the advantage the advantage Tesla has, it's incredible, which is why I think if Tesla doesn't get the amount of chips that he really needs, I think he would make the blueprint and just start making the Terrafab, because they made the lithium refining. Like they were at first saying that, hey, we need more of these, and many people weren't listening to it, and then they made it themselves in Texas.
Yeah, again, that is vertical integration out of necessity.
Yes.
He doesn't have silly fantasies about how hard this work is.
He does it.
No, he just realizes that to get where he needs to go, he's got to do a lot of this himself. And in the case of battery, there's a lot of reasons for that, including de-risk, global de-risk.
Yep.
And so, do you go all the way to the lithium mine? In some cases, yeah, the answer is yes. So the fab is a crazy idea and a not so crazy idea, all wrapped up in the same box. And I think, we'll definitely start to see how he plans to do this in the next couple months, because the other thing about it is, I talked about this pinch point where suddenly, there's not enough global complex chip supply to feed his products. But if he's going to start, he's got to start now.
Yes.
Right. It's not like he can wait until 2 months before he sees that and, oh, guess what? That's game over. So it's the largest high quality problem I think he faces.
Could you imagine in the Q4 earnings call or Q1 earnings call, he's going to come out and say that, yeah, we're going to start building. We've already started.
Yeah. Well,
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, if he comes out and says that.
What's interesting is I think for all of what he does from an enterprise, he's an amazing capital allocator.
Yes.
He uses capital at Tesla as if it's his own. I mean, I know that sounds silly because it kind of is.
It's true.
But he is very, very cautious about how he spends Tesla's money. When he sees the scale out point ahead of him, that's the moment he's going to play. And that's the moment he's going to allocate capital. And then when he does allocate capital, he's not shy. But I mean, we're in this weird case where I don't know, I'm not aware of the current balance sheet, but I think Tesla has about $50+ billion of cash lying around, so to speak. But that's not a lot if you consider what the kinds of things we're talking about. The fab alone is godly. I mean, it's not all at once you write the big check, but going down that path, you consume capital at an enormous rate. So the reason I brought up that whole convergence of these other companies is I feel like something is coming where we're going to see some kind of, I don't want to say merger in some classic sense. I'm just saying is we're going to see some kind of new structure and some kind of corporate structure that brings these companies closer together and allows them to more aggressively share capital and resource. It's just a guess, but there's too many things, happening where that's not a reasonable guess.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. I think as we keep going to the future, we can see all these companies, I think it's like 5 or 6 different companies, one way, shape, or form, helping each other out, working together. SpaceX, Elon talking about having the databases or having energy in space with buying Optimus, and then you have Neuralink with Optimus parts with humans. You have Boring Company with tunnels underground,
think about the Boring Company, which nobody really gives much thought to, but they are embarking now on connecting Las Vegas Airport to downtown and the convention center, where they expect to do 20,000 rides a day. Every one of those rides will be eventually in an autonomous robotaxi. They've already started. I was in Nashville last week. They've started the prep work for tunneling from the Nashville airport to downtown.
Oh, wow.
And they're doing that as their own sort of private enterprise. Basically, do your math. It's an incredibly profitable exercise because of how they can tunnel.
Yeah.
Their cost per mile of tunnel is, I don't know, at least an order of magnitude lower than competitive. And so now they build a tunnel, and now they run these autonomous taxis through them and connect airports to downtown in ways that lead to greater efficiency. But now what do you got there? Well, you've got a whole bunch of Tesla technology running through the tunnels. So, I'm not saying that on day one he thought of that as the grand plan. He obviously thought whatever the tech of the Boring Company was rather cool, and he saw the potential of that from a dollar perspective. But then all of a sudden you can see how that starts to be connective, and it's the outlier, right? It's definitely the outlier. And so that's why I'm bringing it up, because the other ones we're talking about, where you've got Tesla, SpaceX, and XAI, you can see that as a very, very tight triangle of companies. And then you can see Neuralink kind of reaching into that box, and then, oh my God, there's the Boring Company too.
Yeah. You get all this. It's crazy. But going back to the topic of the chips, Elon mentioned that he can walk the line with Samsung once they built it, which is incredible. That is insane. I don't think any other company allows that such thing. Now, when we pair that up with like going, with Tesla building the AI 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever number is going to go on up until, I mean, what does this mean for like the tech, for the products, the advancement of Optimus, how fast they can push the products out, which includes the software FSD. I mean, we're seeing even today, just FSD version 14, like every week there's an update.
Right.
And this is just with AI 4.
Right.
So
here's the interesting thing. I've been writing a lot about FSD. People follow me on X, know that I write these articles, but one of the more recent ones, I think number 8 of 9, was about the unification of the tech stack of Optimus and FSD. And I've said to others that I feel like Optimus is sort of like the little guy, little brother that's been pulled along for a bit, but it's gonna swap. Optimus is gonna be out in front in terms of the product that is the forcing function product at Tesla for this embodied AI. And what I mean by that is, let me give you one example. Power, right? Our vehicles have, I don't know, 50 to 100 kilowatt hour batteries, and Optimus has maybe a 2 to 2.5 kilowatt hour battery, right? And while Optimus isn't trying to move its mass the way a vehicle is, in terms of, it's a power constrained device. It's going, early Optimus release, I feel like the one true ism, the one thing that's probably true about the first Optimus, is that they'll have very low cycle to, recharge times, maybe 2 hours of use or something. I'm making this up, but it all depends on, but they've got a bunch of actuators, and they've got 1 or 2 of these AI chips. And so these chips are roughly around 200 to 250 watt consumers. These aren't the kind of chips that sit in your iPhone. These things are, big consumers of power. They're not like an NVIDIA chip at 700 plus watts in the data center. But those things have fixed power supply, and those things they're bathed in, cooling liquids, and so they have these ideal environments. So now you have Optimus that has to run an amazing amount of inference. I mean, if we can start talking about the use cases in Optimus in terms of how much compute it needs to do the things it needs to do. I mean, not only does it need to move around and do the tasks it's assigned, but it also has to interact with humans, and it has to have a great degree of memory of those human interactions. And all of that, the memory alone creates massive context windows that have to get pushed through the AI, so that when you say to Optimus, hey, can you go get me an apple? You're sitting down watching TV, and you want Optimus to go slice you an apple. It has to remember how you like it sliced, and whether you want it with peanut butter or cheese or something else, right? And my point is that that product is going to use a ton of compute, probably way more compute than the car needs for FSD by far, and it's in a much more power constrained environment. So one of the reasons that Elon is leaning in on, really, really doing the best class inference chips is because even if he went and got a NVIDIA Edge processor, he would not get the kind of efficiency to watt type of conversion he needs to make it a viable product. In other words, that's why he's so much the reason the same Apple does its own chips, right? Apple gets great benefit from these chips in terms of power and performance, and they've excelled at that over the years, and they've made it a massive competitive advantage to iPhone and of course the Macs and watch, for that matter. But this is the same game that Elon's in. You have to build a incredible chip team, and you've got to build an incredible chip that is tailored to the software use cases that your products demand. It's a fully integrated type of product, much like Apple does its products. From that perspective, Optimus, I think, will start to take the lead because of one single thing. Mostly, it's the most power constrained device, and then all of a sudden, everything downstream will benefit from that. The thing that's most difficult to do is how much silicon on these chips is dedicated to the specific AI processes that both Optimus and FSD use versus how much silicon is general purpose. In other words, if you say that Tesla, am building AI 5, 6, 7, 8 just for Optimus and just for FSD and maybe some other embodied device, like a drone or whatever, then you can probably say, okay, that system, that chip can be very, very tuned to the vision to action kind of inference that they've developed, their stack, right? But as soon as you decide, hey, let's put that chip in space, now you've got, there's other issues, but you certainly, one of the things is now you're suddenly doing generic inference, if you will. You're doing kind of inference that you see that the ChatGPTs and the Groks and the Geminis do, where you're and that uses different parts of architecturally. The biggest difference fundamentally is how you use these different math cores of the chip, whether you're using integer 4, integer 8, floating point 8, floating point 16. These today and these chips are different math cores. There's some tech, and I think Tesla has even a patent on it, and how you can dynamically move around the different numerics of these things. And maybe that's what they intend to put in or have put in AI 5 or will put in AI 6. But at present, you've got this kind of things pulling at each other. And one side, you want to dedicate functions on that silicon to the use cases, because then you get more bang for your buck, more efficiency. And on the other hand, you might want some generalized processing, which pulls against that idea. So it's a tricky business to get that right. But I think the one great advantage is you do it in-house, regardless of your use cases. You can examine those use cases to a great degree of granularity and build arguably the best thing possible for those use cases. If you look at NVIDIA, those chips are amazing, but they're all extremely general purpose from a GPU perspective, right? They are trying to solve everybody's problems. When you buy a Blackwell chip, it's not just for this kind of training. It's not just for a large language model. It could be used for generative images or video. It could be used for DNA kind of AI, AI that does DNA called sequencing, but you get the idea. So Tesla is like on a different area here. They're like, let's build a chip where we know what the use case is. And then they get to decide, their decision framework is, how much do we expand the functions of that chip? In other words, how many more transistors do we put in silicon to deal with other things that may come along and for general inference? But it's a great thing to see them lean in on this program. I mean, without this chip program, I think I can't even imagine. How about I put it this way? These chips are the brain of these products, and without these chips, these products could not exist. It's super mission critical. So the fact that they, Elon's recently said, I have chips on the brain. I can regurgitate the architecture of the AI5 chip to paper. I can, go from brain to paper. You can see why he's so focused on this.
Yeah, it's the most important. I'm looking like it now. It's the most important thing right now for Tesla because, well, as we know, it's not a car company.
Yeah.
They're building a whole bunch of other things that need chips, and AI5 that's going to come out in 2027, and after that, if they work and if they get enough chips, what we talked about, that 12-month cycle, like that is, I mean, with phones we can see that now. Imagine that with a car, like but with a car, every single year is a new, like, stronger, a better, and more advanced brain.
Oh, you're certainly going to see that with Optimus. Certainly see that because that product will change over time in ways that we could guess at, but there's all sorts of different sensors that product may eventually include, or sensor packs, that it doesn't have today. If you use it to go into mines and you want to sort of sniff chemicals, and there's a whole bunch of things that you could see are, and by the way, every single sensor, every input and every output for that device is a good way of thinking about it. So input, of course, is largely vision and audio, an audio stream for Optimus, and touch sensors, these tactile touch sensors on the fingers and so forth. And then you've got outputs, right? All the actuation of the hands and the feet, the torso, head, etc. Everything you do with input and output goes through that processor with an AI stack. So you've got all the software. I mean, outside the what I'll call the harness software, all the software of Optimus is AI. All of it requires this inference. And outside what I said, like what I mean by the harness is there's traditional kind of software that collects data from the sensors and sends controls to actuators. That's kind of traditional, driver level software stuff that people would be familiar in the embedded space. But of course, the brain of the thing that's actually deciding what controls to actually actuate, comes from an AI.
That's insane. And the more advanced these chips get, the quicker and faster Tesla can push out these products at a much higher intelligent level. And
certainly what you'll see is the just like the iPhone chips, you'll see more power, better power to performance. So you'll be able to see, what you would expect is, if all things were held constant, a next gen chip put in Optimus will probably increase its battery life by 30 or 40%, something like that. I'm making that up, but that's sort of typical. Given if you hold the battery pack constant in size, maybe it gets more dense. If you hold the functions constant, of course, they won't be held constant. It'll increase. Then all of a sudden you get this chip that will have better efficiency, and therefore, you'll be able to do more cycles and with less power and get longer battery life between charges or whatever.
You want to put all this together when you have enough chips and you are advanced in AI, and Tesla is able to push out these products and at a rapid pace. My God, the valuation of this thing.
Yeah, that's
that's got to be crazy.
I absolutely feel that Tesla will be the most valuable company in the world in,
me too,
give or take 5 years.
Yes.
I don't care so much about the timeline. Obviously, I don't want it to be 30, and it won't be 2, but somewhere in the 5 to 10 year timeline, you're going to see. I mean, just if you just look at Elon's comp plan alone.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you know, I did this post a couple weeks back, and I said the final, I was talking about the final boss using
Yes.
gaming language about the $400 billion EBITDA milestone.
Yeah.
And I was trying to put some perspective on that. And so I said, Saudi Aramco did, I think at one point, 1 year, 2022, if I'm correct, they did $225 billion in EBITDA. That was the largest single yearly effective earnings by any company. If you take Apple, Google, and Microsoft, I think Apple, Google, and Microsoft, you add them together, you don't get 400.
Yes.
So 400 is a big number, and I put that together in a post.
Elon reposted it too. Yeah.
Yeah, Elon got on it and quote posted it, and the thing, ran up to 23 million views or something crazy in no time. But it was like, I was looking at that thinking, I hope people realize how insane. I mean, that, and by the way, that was in the sea of just as the package had passed, and there was all this garbage language out there from people about, Elon was just given $1 trillion, and, of course, like as if he didn't have to earn it, as if there weren't milestones, and as if the milestone we weren't talking about is beyond the final boss in any video game ever. So I was thinking about that, and I was thinking, if he were to achieve that, there's no way on this earth or any other place where there's rational financial markets that the stock price would settle at 8.5 trillion.
Oh,
because
no way.
No, because he's going to get 20, 30, 40, 50 multiple on that.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to see yourself into $20 trillion company before you know it. And even if he gets 2/3 the way there and doesn't actually meet the milestone for himself, the market cap will explode into the, I don't know, 12 to 15 trillion, right?
Yeah.
I'm making this up, but, just ballparking it, spitballing it around. And so for sure, there's no doubt in my mind, they have the products in the pipeline that meet a potential market opportunity to be able, like Robotaxi. I always look at these kind of charts of revenue, and you look at Tesla's an auto company. Tesla's as an autonomy company focused on transportation through Robotaxi, and how small that makes the auto revenues look. And then Tesla as a company that's doing, a labor as service product called Optimus, makes the Robotaxi business squish down and look small. These are absolutely massive businesses, and I don't see, outside of some black swan event, which nobody can predict, if Tesla, Elon, and company execute, I think they hit those numbers. How could you not? It's almost like, how could you not? I mean, they'll be able to sell the products at the price points. I assume their margin structure will be healthy. So, all things would line up to create an extremely valuable company in the likes that we haven't, even seen. And and NVIDIA is sort of like, almost like the kind of the blueprint for doing it. If you hit with, how do I say it right? Infrastructure products are awesome, but when you hit with direct to consumer products, those markets are just massive. Look at iPhone and what it's done to Apple. So I can't see a place outside of, crazy events and missed execution. I mean, the whole issue here that I would discuss with anybody, from a rational basis, I'd say it probably won't meet your most aggressive timeline. These things will take more time than you expect. If you're going on a particular promise that you think Elon made, cycle that back a little bit in your own playbook and say, okay, that's not. But here's the thing about this. I was talking to a good friend of mine in Nashville, and I said, we're talking about investing, and I talked about Tesla a fair bit. And I said to him, I said, after I leave you here and through the Thanksgiving weekend, poll your neighbors and friends and ask them what they know about Tesla's product pipeline, and you can put it in easy to understand terms like, did you know that Tesla cars can drive themselves? Or, Tesla's building this human looking robot. And if the answers are, wow, I didn't know that, or some version of, whatever, some kind of tamped down version, then we're early.
Yeah.
Here.
And just to add something here is that most people still don't know this, that Teslas can drive themselves. Like if people, once people realize that Tesla is no longer this electric car company, but this autonomous car company, my goodness, I don't think, not financial advice, but I'm very confident that the valuation today, it will not be this low.
Well, I mean, one dimension of this, okay. One way to think about this is that Tesla, obviously, Wall Street does not think of Tesla as just an auto company, because if it did, it would not be worth more than the next 20 auto companies combined, right? Okay, fair enough. So check that box and say, and some people will then conclude, if I value it as an auto company, then of course it's wildly overvalued. Some people we even know by names, out there in recent times. But the wrong way to look at that is, then why is it there? If you want to look at it, they say, why is it there? You think people ran it up based on some false promise? No, there's a great degree of people who see this future state, and they see this lean into the next great set of products that this company has that are much bigger TAM than its existing products. And ironically, if you value it as just an auto company, part of the calculus is understanding what autonomy does to that. Because if autonomy, we are going to reach, there's a moment, and I don't know when that moment is, but there is a moment when autonomy is going to seem like the thing you do to move around. It's not going to seem like the 10% use case. I'd rather drive my car. No, it's going to seem like this to people. Why would I drive a car in an hour and a half commute twice a day when the car can drive me and I can do stuff while I'm going back and forth? That's how it's going to seem to people. And people will pay for that. And how will they pay for it? And what do they need for that? They'll need a Tesla vehicle. So it's conceivable that the auto business that we run up to some, I'll round off the number, 2 million a year, looks actually small compared to what the demand on that might be. And this is, again, if you heard Elon, and I think it was in the last earnings call where he said, I've reached this point, I don't know if he said it exactly this way, but I've reached this point of confidence where I'm increasing car production.
Yes. Yeah. He said that shareholder meeting. Yeah,
and a lot of people said, I guess he means Cybercab, which he's obviously going deep on in terms of, will that, and I don't know what he said. He said something like from 2 to 3 million units or something. I don't know. Do you know? Do you remember?
2 million, 2.5 million next year, and then all the way to 2030, about 5 million.
But all of a sudden, those numbers could be small. I mean, they could be small because if Toyota's doing 10 million a year, and people see that all of a sudden they want this thing called a Tesla because it drives them around. Like I always said, the catalyst for these EVs is not the fact that they're EVs, it's autonomy.
Yes.
And there's no rational other platform for that, meaning like you don't put autonomy on a nice vehicle. It just doesn't.
It doesn't work.
It can technically work, but I'll tell people a million times over, it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. It's like you want a clean, consistent, solid state architecture, software-defined architecture sitting underneath your autonomy stack. It's like gluing an autonomy stack onto a old style, non-software defined architecture vehicle. It just doesn't really work. And then of course, right now, Tesla's the only game in town. I mean, there's nobody that's really even close to FSD.
Yeah, unless other manufacturers do follow up and do want to get a license, but it seems like according to Elon, not many of them are. Maybe one Chinese company is. I mean, I never even heard of them. Well, they came out and they were, but if that doesn't happen, there's no one else in the game, not even Waymo, that can really do what. I mean, for me right now, like in Kuwait, I drive because there's no Tesla there at the moment. And back here in Toronto, this is incredible. Like 99% of the time, 99.5% of the time, I'm not driving. The other day, I had a Chipotle bowl in my hand and a fork eating, and this thing was dry, and I was in shock. I gotta make a separate video on that, doing it again, because that was just incredible. And everyone's just watching me. It's like this guy is eating a whole Chipotle bowl. The car's driving better than, and it's incredible.
I'll tell you, I came back from my Thanksgiving holiday where I was out of state, and I came back to a newly, freshly installed 14.2 because it had installed a couple days, I think, before Thanksgiving, but I wasn't around, and I was eager to try it, and I got in it, and I went for a couple, and I realized, okay, this is how it's different than 14.1, and I thought about it a bit, and then I looked at it yesterday, only a couple days out, and I realized pretty much 100 miles I had done on FSD. And by the way, this is way past me being interested. It was like a couple errands, a doctor's appointment, of this, of that, the other thing. So it had nothing to do with me sitting there saying, "Oh, let me run it around for 100 miles in demo mode." It was just what I realized I start to do. It's what I'm doing. It's not like I don't really, and it's a little weird because I look at the car and I go, geez, I got this wonderful, nice Model 3 performance. I don't really use much of the performance aspects of the car. No, I mean, I think we are in a very unique place because as Tesla has come on to solve this problem in the best kind of way, with a problem that seemed unsolvable to most just 2 years back, no less.
Oh yeah.
I've said to my friends, I said, from a computer science perspective, autonomy in terms of, let's call it vehicle autonomy, robotic, is really one of the most vexing problem of computer science for the last 30 years, maybe more. People have been talking about it. When I was at Rivian, every time we interviewed people from college, they always came to us, even if the groups, like my group I was not the autonomy group there, but all the kids came up that we were doing recruiting at colleges, and they all said, "Oh, look at my autonomy project." Basically it was, right? It's like, look what we're doing in robotics. We've got this little car that, and I contributed to this project. And is there a job for me in autonomy at Rivian? And so, people were very much interested in this space. And those were what I'll call nascent days of this, where Tesla was leaning in, but it was way pre-12, 2018, 2019, and people were just starting to think about the potential for AI to solve these problems, right? And they were really thinking about it from a perception side, not like a planning side. They were still thinking reams and reams of code, decision trees to aka version 11, like how Tesla did version 11, which was not going to work. But I mean, here we are, and through all the companies that have done this, only one has done it in a way that scales. And ironically, it's the same, not ironically, I guess, it's the same company that can scale it.
Yep.
So, both sides of those things are connecting now, because, it's not as if Tesla is dedicating a huge part of its factory in Texas producing a cyber cab because they don't think that's not going to work.
Exactly.
This is a car that pops out, I don't know, no hands-on manufacturing, no human in the loop, comes out of the factory at scale at 10 seconds or less, and can really drive itself into its service market if you really think about it.
Yeah, that's gonna be a very wild, awesome future.
It's incredible to think of, and it's even more incredible to think of. As I was on the highway this last weekend, I was driving down, and I said to my wife, I said, it's going to seem very weird. All these cars around us have no idea. Like, the people in those cars and the cars themselves, low capability cars, filled with stupid software and bad buttons, and all the stuff that has changed with the likes of Rivian and Tesla. And now you've got autonomy and the idea that people, all these people are driving their cars, and a lot of them today will tell you, "Oh, I'd love to drive my car."
Oh yeah, no way.
But that'll change. That'll change.
Yeah.
So that'll change so fast. As one said, it'll make your head spin.
Yep. Again, I have not been driving since I've been here, and I love it. I love it. Elon said something very good, very, very interesting, and very, I feel him now. You may think you want to drive, but you really don't. Maybe once in a blue moon. Maybe you want to go for a nice joyride, but that's probably going to be once a week or month. But daily routine, going to work, same traffic, going to groceries, going to the park.
Well,
same
I mean,
route, same route.
And it may be you think you want to own a car, but you don't.
That
too, right?
You have no idea how many people here in Toronto that I've been talking to that they're just like, my payment is a lot on a car.
Yeah.
My insurance.
Yeah. No, I can easily see I can easily see the 3-car household go to a 2-car household.
And then
I'm speaking about the 2 parents and driving age children, and then all of a sudden you decide, well, we don't need that extra third vehicle, and the insurance costs, which are insane for especially young drivers. And so all of a sudden you see a whole bunch of people making, I mean, Tesla will drive their per mile cost, the Robotaxi, down to 30 to 25 cents a mile.
Yeah, that's insane.
Okay, so once you get there, it would be quite impossible to see your way towards a different situation unless you were looking at it as a luxury, not a necessity, right? And then that's fine, by the way. Plenty of people will take that luxury, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
But if you're doing the necessity play, no, you're not gonna own a car, pay the insurance, pay for service, all the other things that come along with that, just to have that asset sitting in your garage 90% of the time.
Yeah, we spoke about this in previous podcasts, saying how we see young adults, they don't go for the driver's license because they have other options. And moving forward, when you have the option of this, like a robotaxi and a cybercab with a cost per mile so low, then the vehicle ownership will slowly, well, I would say first slowly, and then we will see a big drop once everyone realizes.
These tends to be all these things tend to be slowly and then all at once kind of scenarios. Because once they start climbing that S curve, that disruptive curve, it gets into the slope where so like you see autonomy is really to the far left of that curve, and it's traveling along the line like this, and it's not really, it's doing a small rise. And then when people, I mean, you start to hear people like in Germany say FSD works, and in France it works. I mean, do you realize what's going to happen here, people? That's a big deal.
Big deal at all. This is why I love having you on, Phil. We speak about these things. We get so deep into like the tech, the software, the fundamentals, and it's really good for the investor to just sit back and, as we always talk about in our podcast, remove the garbage, remove the noise, and just look at what's happening. Just see the fundamentals and see how incredible it is, and
I think it's really. I think it's really important, and I'm glad I have the advantage. I mean, I'll be honest with you, is if you're going to be in these businesses, I think it's really important to understand it at as deeply technical level as possible. It gives you a great advantage over those who do not understand. And there are many smart people who do not understand what these businesses are and why there are advantages here that are not in other companies. That's a fact. I mean, they don't understand it. They do old style modeling for something that is really outpacing them. And they're, for somebody who's not exactly young, they may be younger than me, but they look like dinosaurs in terms of, oh yeah, truly, I just look at them and I go, what is it that I could teach you about this that make you understand how big these opportunities are, and why, in this case, the opportunities we're talking about, Tesla has such an amazing, almost impenetrable moat around these opportunities. And if you don't get your arms around that, and you float up here, of course your conviction won't be strong. It'll just be kind of wavering around. I mean, I heard it right before we did this podcast. I heard someone saying Uber's going to have certain percent of its fleet autonomously in 2026, and I'm like, oh bullshit, that's just so what is it? I haven't even dug into it, but I guarantee it's some kind of quasi partnership. I just know,
like
but it doesn't mean that it doesn't mean for the first couple days a story like that, won't do damage, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. This is why it's very important to understand the fundamentals and the things that we spoke about today. So I appreciate that a lot, Phil. Really do. If you guys aren't following Phil on X, there's a link in the description, and there's a handle right there on his name tag right there.
I don't hide behind some crazy handle. It's really my name.
Yeah. So I recommend everyone to go ahead and follow him. He has some really good content, and I love all of it. It's really good, details and insightful. Thank you so much, Phil, for joining me. Until the next one. By the time this video comes out, it'll be close to Christmas. So Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, Phil.
All right.
Take care, guys. See you guys in the next one. See ya.